Minister, you're very, very welcome to the House. I'm delighted that you were able to come with us this morning. I was prompted to push this commencement debate through basic anger and frustration, Minister, and I constantly feel in relation to the lack of accessibility and the consistent the inconsistent access that we have to public transport in this country, and I only feel that, and I only witness that. I don't experience it because I'm able-bodied, and when I want to use a train or a bus, I can just do it. However, thousands of our citizens in this country, when they wish to travel, they have to jump through hoops, call ahead, plan, make arrangements, and be ready to be let down at all times. Barriers, blockages, no access, no answers as to why our friends, our neighbours, and their human rights are being denied and often ignored. I want to highlight a particular situation that occurred last Saturday. Vicky Matthew highlighted on her Facebook page how she was at Dublin Connolly railway station, and they failed to work on their duties to serve their customers. She gave 24 hours notice and that she would need ramp and assistance. This lady did what she was asked. She did everything that she was supposed to do, but she was abandoned on the train. She phoned the station for help, and no one came. But a random passenger helped her, got the ramp, and let her off the train. And this is unacceptable. We really have to find a better way to provide an equity in our society. Another situation that a man from Louth, John Morgan, highlighted to me, how he was stopped travelling to Wales to see a relative. He bought flights to travel, planned on travelling to Dublin Airport from Dundalk via the bus Erin 100X bus. Early in the morning to make his flight, he called bus Erin 2 weeks in advance to ask about wheelchair accessibility on that bus. He was called back very promptly to say that that main bus out of Dundalk was inaccessible. It wasn't an accessible route. So he couldn't get to the airport. John, because of the lack of infrastructure, he was prevented from travelling. The transport and infrastructure and public transport do not fully enable the freedom of movement on all modes of transport. And it isn't just about access, it's about having to give notice. It's about making people, singling people out to be different, making them do different things than us able-bodied people just take for granted. Therefore, it's not about choice, but it's really about planning ahead for that smooth journey to become a reality. The lack of accessible transport services impacts on inclusion, social interaction, jobs, education, mental health, and the cost of living with a disability. It affects families, it affects their community, it affects every aspect of their life. Transport for some disabled people in Ireland is inaccessible due to small, simple things like human error, long booking times, inaccessible routes, or the built environment does not link to the transport service. Taking the bus and it's not connected to the pavement. When that happens, Minister, that route is inaccessible. Independent Living Movement Ireland have done some really, really excellent research, and I'm delighted you're here in the House, Minister, because I will give you copies of them. They are a DPO, Disabled Persons Organisation, run by people who know their story the best, so they are the best advocates for themselves. And I highlighted in my commencement matter our rights, our obligations as a state under the UN CRPD. And Article 9 relates to transport. To enable persons with disabilities to live independently and participate fully in all aspects of life, states should ensure persons with disabilities access on an equal basis to others, to physical environment, to transportation, to information and communications. We should not be blocking them, and hopefully we are going to implement, have the optional protocol, Minister, and that will ensure that we are accountable for not taking action on accessibility. Thank you.
Senator Untitled.
Thank you very much indeed, Senator. And you're absolutely right to quote Article 9 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which puts, as you say, obligations on state parties to ensure access for persons with disabilities to inter alia transportation in both urban and rural areas. In line with that article, my department and its agencies are progressively making public transport accessible for people with disabilities, including in rural areas, by ensuring that new infrastructure and services are accessible from the start and retrofitting older legacy infrastructure and facilities to make them accessible. Accessibility features such as wheelchair accessibility and audiovisual aids are built into all new public transport infrastructure projects and vehicles from the design stage. Newer systems such as the Luas are fully accessible, as are all new buses purchased by the National Transport Authority. However, as the examples you cite in Connolly or Mr Morgan and his difficulties, work remains to be done, particularly on retrofitting of older legacy infrastructure, for example, a lot of our Victorian area train stations. My department therefore funds an ongoing accessibility retrofit programme managed by the NTA, which includes programmes to install accessible bus stops in rural and regional areas, to upgrade bus bays at regional bus and train stations, to upgrade train stations to make them accessible to wheelchair users, and to provide grant support to increase the number of wheelchair accessible taxis. Our department has developed a number of three-year sectoral plans called Transport Access for All under the Disability Act 2005. The concept of access for all is based on the principle of accessible public transport and other passengers. The third sectoral plan was published in 2012. The first whole-of-government National Disability Inclusion Disability Strategy, was established in 2013, followed by the current NDIS 2017 to 2022, and covers all sectors of society, including transport. In addition to the NDIS, the UN CRPD and the Comprehensive Employment Strategy for People with Disabilities 2015 to 2024, there are a range of other national strategies which contain actions towards making public transport accessible for people with disabilities, people with reduced ability and mobility and older people. All of these actions across all such strategies have been combined into the Department of Transport Accessibility Work Programme, which is in effect the successor to the sectoral plans. My department's Accessibility Work Programme provides the framework for prioritising projects and programmes to progressively make public transport accessible. It's a living document which is updated quarterly in advance of meetings with the Accessibility Consultative Committee and the NDIS Steering Group. Under the National Disability Inclusion Strategy, each government department is required to have a Disability Consultative Committee to oversee and monitor the actions assigned to it and its agencies. My department's consultative committee is called the Accessibility Consultative Committee, and is the successor to the department's Public Transport Accessibility Committee, which was established in 2000. Members of the Accessibility Consultative Committee is drawn from organisations representing people with disabilities, members of the Disability Stakeholders Group, key agencies under the aegis of the department, as well as other relevant state agencies. The ACC use Accessibility Work Programme to monitor progress in progressively making public transport accessible in line with the UN CRPD and the NDIS and other national strategies. The next Accessibility Work Programme update will be published in early December on the government.ie portal, where previous updates along with minutes of all ACC meetings can be found.
Margaret, Senator McGreehan.
Oh my gosh, Minister. Yeah, very glad to hear that there will be an update in early December 2021. I suppose we're a great country for policies and documents, and it's work and investment that really needs to be pushed. We're talking about encouraging people with everybody on public transport, and I would love to have a safe, accessible transport for all my community, for all my friends, that I know they're safe, that I know they're not going to be blocked getting off the bus or getting on a bus or getting off a train or not knowing where, for visually impaired, where they are, and that this is fair, and it's not about equality because we're all equal, we're all able to access. It's about equity, and we need to build that equity within our infrastructure and create that fair society, because disability, our citizens with disabilities deserve every single right and deserve not to have any barriers put in front of them. And if we consider that almost 15% of our population have some sort of disability, I think that it's a huge cohort of our friends and community. So thank you, Minister, for your time.
Margaret, Minister.
I'd say my experience in transport campaigning and planning over 25 years now is that when you design for access for all it benefits all. Take the Lewis as an example, which was designed as an accessible system. It benefits everyone, and whether that's a parent with a buggy with a child, or whether that's someone in a wheelchair, whether it's someone who's visual or other disabilities, it benefits everyone when you design for people with disability. Just wanted to give some further detail just as background in terms, particularly that issue in lifts and stations has been a critical issue for disability. This year we've provided an investment of 5.8 million. That was, and there was a boost, an additional 2 million provided in that, recognising we need to accelerate the programme. The issue you mentioned in Connolly, that incident, which is a real concern, my understanding is that there isn't a mechanism, there isn't a wheelchair, an automatic wheelchair ramp facility for heavy rail systems. So therefore you do have to have someone from Irish Rail in attendance to be able to, in that instance there was another passenger, which is not acceptable, that for whatever reason. Irish Rail, as I understand, are developing a smartphone accessibility app to address some of the key communications breakdowns which occur. Human error can occur when providing assistance to persons with disabilities. I hope that may see such instances not happening in the future. And then lastly, on that coach, Mr. Morgan's experience on the coach, my understanding and the information I was got is that all long-distance coach types they require the removal of up to 4 seats to be able to, and that's why there's that 24-hour notice requirement. I'm surprised that Dundalk route didn't have a coach where those seats could be taken out for whatever reason. I'm told again that there isn't, for long distance coaches, they don't yet have anything other than the high floor options, which present some of those difficulties in terms of making it easily accessible. But I think for all PSO regional commuter routes now up to something like 50 kilometres, new buses are coming which will typically have low floor access, which will allow wheelchair users to board with normal ramp access. So it is changing, it's slow, it's particularly difficult on older rail and on long distance bus services, but that shouldn't stop us looking to make sure that they are as accessible as any new services that we provide.